Hi, it's Wayne O'Keefe, and I fished the Maribyrnong River this morning. Now, one of the interesting things was that I got there relatively early, which was okay, and the tide was in a good position. It was quite high, that was working well. There's plenty of flow in the water. When I first got there, there was a large flock of cormorants in the area, swimming through as a group. It's sort of like a squadron of them in rows, going through the water, picking off all the small fish. This is the kiss of death in fishing. So that happened straight off, and I didn't know whether things were going to improve. But luckily, I got a few fish in the session before there was a fairly drastic change in the weather. The temperature dropped about 10 degrees. The wind really kicked up, and a little bit of rain started. So I had to leave after that. So it was a very, very short session, but it was productive. So it was okay. Caught a few fish, and that's always good. Anyway, here's the cormorants that were swimming through when I got there.
As you can see, there is a group of cormorants over there, and look at them. As a flock of these things, they are basically chasing the fish together. Now, there's a lot of them, there's over a dozen. So that type of activity is hard for the fish to avoid. In other words, all of the small fish there are going to get taken by those things when they work like that, when they cooperate together. And the other thing is it'll push some of the fish away. So sometimes, now these have just gone through my fishing spot. If I was to come down here, say 15 minutes later, I wouldn't know why there's no fish in the area, and it may take some time for the fish to come back. And I'm really hoping these birds are going to leave, because there's quite a few of them and the fishing won't improve. There'll be no fishing at all. Oh, they're coming back. Fantastic. So, yeah. And actually, I think the numbers are growing. So that's what can happen. And you can see they move together. They create a front where they're all in a row effectively, and then they just go chasing those fish. Now, admittedly, they'll pick up the smaller ones. These are not big cormorants, but by the same token, they are picking up fish at the moment. They are going to scare everything away. Well, so much for fishing this spot for a while. Great. Well, what I'll have to do is just wait for a while and until they move on. Hopefully they do move on. So I've already thrown some burley into this area. Maybe I've attracted the fish, which is what's causing them to stay here. So it might be my fault. Okay, well done, Wayne. Thankfully they're moving on. I'm hoping it's because they haven't removed every fish from the area. Okay, so after something like that, it may take quite a while for the other fish to return. Well, into the first one. Whoa. Oh, he's got me snagged, first time. Well, I went running everywhere, and for that. Anyway, just the important thing is that the burley has got the fish coming. The small ones will come first. Hopefully the bigger ones will come after that. So just got to do the right things to get those fish happening. Anyway, a fish is better than no fish, but this is close to no fish. So I've targeted an area. So what I did is, I mean, if you come down, if you know the waterway, then it's pretty easy to fish it. What I did is, before I fished this morning though, I looked for the spots that I thought would have the fish, the most productive areas. So you've got to be able to read the water. Really important to be able to know where the fish might be holding. So I've worked that out on this stretch here. I'm casting to a single spot, and it's proving to be the right spot to cast to. So watercraft, streamcraft really counts when you come to, especially if you come to a new spot. Don't fish straight away when you come to a new spot.
look at the area, look at where you think the fish holding areas are first, which means sometimes you have to walk the banks and take a bit of time. So you may not start fishing for half an hour, but better to have identified a fish holding spot and get a fish out of it than go straight into it, into the first spot you come to, and not get a fish in that day. So that's really important. So I'm just going to cast to the same spot again. I've just felt it hit bottom now, so I know that it's stopped where I want it to. And the water's moving pretty well, so the good thing is there's plenty of flow in the water at the moment. So what they say is, on a river, on anything tidal and anything like the beach, the surf, estuaries, rivers, no flow, no go. So you want to make sure that you're fishing generally into moving water. Once it ebbs, once the tide stops, it just doesn't seem to be as productive. So moving water is really, really good, and of course the incoming tide, the top 2 hours of the tide before it actually reaches its peak, and then the hour afterwards are generally the most productive. Now I've got to be careful, I'm setting up one rod and not necessarily always watching this rod, so I can get bites, or bites might be happening and I don't notice. So should always be dedicated to the exercise, but at the moment I want to get this rod up just in case this is for a bigger fish, this is for smaller fish. I always find it's best to take 2 rods, one with lighter gear for the smaller fish, one with gear for bigger fish, because you might get a chance to get a bigger fish. You could get it on either rod. This one is going to have heavier line and more grunt to actually get that bigger fish in, but I'm going to put a bigger hook and bigger bait on. So I'm giving myself a chance on 2 stages. This can have can get bigger fish in it. I just have to play them properly. But because I'll have a much bigger bait on this, I've got a bigger chance of a big fish seeking that out. Also, I'll put a circle hook on it so that I don't have to be watching it all the time. The circle hook is effectively self-hooking, and so the fish will do all the work, I'm hoping. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm getting bites on this one already, but they're small, so it would have been like that small bream that I caught just before. So this, yes, they're starting to bite. I'd put in some, missed it, so that's my fault, not watching. But I've already put burley into the area. That's probably what attracted those cormorants before. Okay, not a big fish, but at least it's something.
Not a massive fish by any means, but got them biting, and I'm actually using my survival pack outfit on this rod. So the survival pack has a very light trace. It makes the hook and the bait very, very natural in the water, so the fish will pick it up without being spooked. Just looks like any other bait in the water. So that's working. We'll get them, hopefully we'll get them bigger, but that's why I use the net today. You just can't lift this out when you're using light traces, especially these things. All they have to do is sort of flick their body and they can actually break the line, but it was that small line and trace that actually helped catch the fish. So there we go. Not a bad little fish, we'll put him straight back. Well, I've just hooked into another one. It's not another, well, sorry, it's another fish, but it's not a big one. But once the burley's going, it really brings it in. Lift this one straight out. Yeah. Okay, so look, I expect to get a number about this size, but that's all right, because if these are coming in and if I've really got them moving, hopefully the bigger rod might be able to get something bigger with that bigger bait. But the one thing about it is you can really enjoy your fishing, even with smaller fish, if you have a light rod. That's why I always have a light one with me, because you feel the impact of the fish, and even fish of this size can feel like a marlin if you've got light quietas. It's really good fun. Well, yeah. Oops. What I'd done, these are only small fish, but they're still coming through. What I did, I have had nothing on my larger rod, on the heavier rod. It's only on the light gear that I'm catching fish. I've got a very small hook, a size 14 on this one. And what I've done is I got a calamari, or pieces of calamari, and I actually bought the tube from the supermarket and cut off thin slices of that and put it onto a small hook. It's only a little tiny stick of calamari, and that's what the fish are loving, and it's staying on the hook so they're not pulling it off. It's a useful tip, that, and you can also dip it in things like, I've dipped it in a little tiny bit of tuna oil just to give it a bit more pizzazz. Fish seem to like it, but they're not taking anything on the big rod. Now the wind has come through pretty heavily. It's on, there's some pretty big gusts, and the temperature is dropping really quickly. My net has been blown into the water, and stuff is going everywhere. There's stuff coming up this tree behind me. So I might have to call it quits. This is just getting a bit unpleasant. Also, if the wind gets really heavy, it does start to close the fish down. But that cold temperature change just now, well, everything's spooking me. The temperature has dropped probably about 5 degrees in about 10 minutes. It's really amazing how that's come through. So I'm probably going to call it quits for today. It had been a pretty good session and I was building it up. I got a few fish, but this has suddenly happened. So I might move on, otherwise I'm going to get stuff wrecked. As you can see, the wind coming through here is pretty phenomenal. But the good thing is that at least on a day like this, so as you can see, yes, it's getting a bit wild. I might have to call it a day. But I did catch some fish. The great thing was that using the lighter gear and that is what got the fish in today. They weren't massive ones, but I just wanted to catch some fish and have some fun. These rods are very, very sensitive, so they feel like you've got a bigger fish on them, which is nice, and it's enjoyable. So
I recommend to anybody, don't go with a big heavy gear to start with. Start on lighter gear, or at least always have a lighter rod with you, because that way, if there's only small stuff about, you can enjoy it. You know, you can sort of feel like you're catching bigger fish. And like sometimes, you know, if you've seen any of my my videos on catching trout and that, those trout aren't big, but they feel okay on the light rods. So it's been okay now, but I'm going to go in before I get blown away. I'm packing up now, and one of the things I always do is just carry a plastic bag with me to put rubbish in. Now, the area I'm fishing now is becoming more and more built up with houses, so the number of people in the area is increasing. It also gets a lot of people fishing in spots like this, and the amount of rubbish around is really disturbing. Please, in respect for the environment and for other people who use the water and who use parklands and things, please just take your rubbish with you. Take a bag like this. I usually pick up some of the other rubbish I find in the area as well. Never leave fishing line, spare fishing line around, things like that. That gets tangled up in the wildlife. And it really is upsetting to see beautiful waterways like this basically polluted by all the rubbish that people leave around. And it's not that difficult to take it with you. So please do that. If everybody just picked up their own rubbish, this wouldn't be near as much of a problem.